Welcome, readers. I am so grateful today to be joined by the international bestseller, Sadeqa Johnson, who just released her new book, Yellow Wife. So we're so grateful to have her here with us. And so welcome, warmest greetings to Sadeqa.
Thank you. I'm super psyched to be here today. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. And I know that you've been doing a lot of the virtual chats for kind of the book promotional tour. So hopefully today we'll come up with a question that either you haven't heard yet or at least put a different spin on it.
For
So
sure.
normally at this part is where I would ask you to give like a brief descriptive summary of Yellow Wife. But instead, I thought maybe you could imagine for us what would a marker say on the Richmond Slave Trail if there was one for Phoebe and that represented like her life, her family, and her history, kind of like the one you saw of Mary Lumpkins and the
Mm,
Lumpkins jail when you did the Richmond Slave Walk in 2016, which originally inspired the book. So I thought
wow.
instead of doing the descriptive summary, that would be a unique spin. I would love to know, like, what would her marker say if it was on the Richmond Slave Trail?
Okay, so you got me, Erin. I know that was your that was your intention coming into this interview. You're like, I'm gonna get her with something that nobody else has asked. So congratulations, you've
Because
done it.
these virtual chats are so wonderful because every time I watch one with you, I learn a new piece of the Yellow Wife that I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. Like, it's so awesome. The pandemic, the joy of it is with the virtual chats is you get to hear authors multiple times, hear them speak about things that you would never have known behind the scenes. So yeah, so I'm hoping people can get a little more slice each time they watch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so that's kind of tricky. All right, so I feel like it would be similar because when I was walking the slave trail, it was the marker of Mary Lumpkins that inspired the story. So if I was walking the slave trail and there was a marker that said Phoebe Dolores Brown, it would say mulatto girl who was the daughter of the master of the plantation, along with his favorite slave, Ruth, who was the medicine woman, and the seamstress, who was fierce at working roots. She was a well loved daughter, loved by all, and really cherished and sheltered to a degree. They wanted to make sure that she had a good life. But she's also very resilient. And so the marker would talk about the fact that Phoebe didn't take no for an answer and that she stood up for herself at every turn wherever she could, that she made the ultimate sacrifices, not only for herself, but for her children on a daily basis, and also for the other enslaved women who she came in contact with on a daily basis.
That's
How's that?
great. I love it.
Okay.
Love it. Um, Also, you kind of, I like the quote, you would talk about, quote, the story bit you after the Richmond Slave Walk. I love that way you said that. And so after the story bit you, you talked about doing a lot of research where you would visit different Virginia plantations and take notes and take photos and utilize the Library of Virginia to read books, especially books by enslaved people like Booker T. Washington. And
Mhm.
you had said that your kids joined you on a lot of these. So I was curious if they asked any questions or raised any statements that stood out to you at the time that you could tell had been raised by doing this experience. Because I thought, what an amazing boots on the ground visual learning experience that they got to be a part of.
My youngest daughter actually, she just turned 13. So at the time that I was writing the book, she was pretty young. I discovered the story in 2016. So she was, I don't know, 8. I can't do the math right now, maybe 7, 8 maybe. But she and I just walked the Richmond Slave Trail with a group in Richmond, a hiking group, Black Girls Hike RVA. And she was on the trail with me. And so I actually have to drag my kids to do stuff. So I dragged her and she asked a question on the trail. So she asked me, she said, Mom, where did you get the name Essex Henry from? Which was
Oh, I
Phoebe's love.
want to know
And I had to think about it because for the most part, a lot of the names came off of slave ledgers. But when she asked me, I thought, no, his didn't. And then I remembered my cousin was doing our family tree on my mother's side, my maternal cousin. And she was able to go all the way back to the 1700s. And she sent it to me when I was writing this book. And I had found out that some of my relatives actually were here in Virginia, not far from where I live, maybe 30, 40 minutes from where
Which
I
is
live.
crazy. Didn't you grow up in Philadelphia?
I did. And I
You
lived in
didn't
New
even know
Jersey.
ancestors that lived there?
No. And,
Okay,
you know, I
that
knew
was
that we had.
very serendipitous that you like moved to Virginia, started writing this story. Like, wow.
It is. That's why I say the story bit me, the story found me, the story wanted me to tell it on so many levels. So I went into the family tree that she created, and I went back into the 17 and the 1800s, and I saw the name Essex. And then I also saw the name Henry on our family tree. And so I put those together to create his name, Essex Henry.
So this was back through your mother's side, like a distant, like cousin or grandfather?
Yes. And it's funny that it was through my mother's side, because I knew on my father's side that we have family in Virginia. I actually got married maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hours from where I live now, which was pre me moving to Virginia. I had no idea, never thought I would move to Virginia.
That you'd end up.
But we got married there because my husband's grandmother lives in Nelson County. And then my father's mother's family was from the same area. And it's beautiful, the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we thought we'll make somewhat of a destination wedding out of it, but merge the two families and just kind of, you know, feel that ancestral feelings that you feel when you're in the home place of where your people come from. And so that's why we got married there, you know. And so there's all these little things that happen prior to me deciding or finding the story and writing it that just kind of was pushing me that way the whole time.
That you can't ignore. You're like, okay, this is another one thing happened today.
Yes, exactly.
And interesting enough how your husband and your families further back came from that same area. It's like you were also meant to
listen, I keep telling him, I'm like, we may be kissing cousins. I mean, who knows? It's too late now. I mean, we're 20 years in with 3 kids. There's nothing else we can do, but you never know.
The other thing that I thought was particularly interesting is you said, because I know you switched from like a contemporary fiction to this historical fiction genre. And you had said that one of the main differences you felt was switching was really having to set the setting of that mid 1800s, really having to bring in the clothing, the 5 senses, the taste, the smells, the speech. And I listened to an author recently, Adrienne Young, who used the term world building. And I was like, oh, that really captures the essence of it. I love that phrase, world building. So I was curious, when you were trying to create this world, were there certain aspects of those descriptor modifiers that were harder to write for you or were difficult because there wasn't as much research regarding? Or if not, like, what was your favorite part to kind of dive into to really like bring back to life history-wise?
Yeah, world building was something that I did not have to do for my first 3 novels, contemporary fiction. I wrote about, you know, what I knew. My husband and I were in a long distance relationship. My first book, they were in a long distance relationship, you know? So it wasn't a matter of me having to kind of dig and build. But for Yellow Wife, I absolutely had to. As a matter of fact, I have a wall right in my office where I would cut different pictures out so that I could, every day when I sat down to write, I can look at the pictures. So if you look in the book, Yellow Wife, when you open up that first page, you see this is the actual jail. And so I had this picture hanging up on my wall so that I could see it and feel it and smell it and that sort of thing. So I did that with the world building. The best part of it for me is discovering new things. You know, just the whole history of our country, the history of the enslaved people, the different ways that it would be different in Richmond versus South Carolina versus New Orleans. I had to be really careful not to jump down rabbit holes that would take me away from the story I was trying to write, because everything was just so, oh my goodness, it was so fascinating.
You're like, oh yeah, I have a book to write. I guess I need to
I need to bring it over here, you know. But that was the most interesting part, was discovering new facts about things that I didn't know about and figuring out how to weave it into the story. And I did, you know, I'm a fiction writer, so this is fiction. This is my imagination, but I did try and weave in as many true stories as I could and fictionalize them. because I looked at writing this story as a way to pay an honor to all of our ancestors. I felt, I was giving a voice to those who did not have a voice. And that was really important for me to getting as many true stories as I could.
And we kind of talked a second ago about the kids helping you with the research and things. So in your opinion, is there a certain age you would say for your kids that they need to be in order to read this book? Or are you?
So my kids have not read any of my books. They're 17, 15, and 13. So the 15 and the 17-year-old, I think, are ready for Yellow Wife. Whereas my contemporary fiction, I think I'm a little sexy, when I write my books. And so I don't know if I want them to see that side of me yet, but with Yellow Wife, I think it's a timely story. I think it's a story that they could understand and grasp. I think it's a story that they need to read because they're not taught, they're not taught these things in school. My youngest daughter, who's 13, she says, Mom, every year for Black History Month, it's the same people. We learn about Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. It's the same ones. And not to take anything away from those wonderful heroes, but there's so much more to Black history. There's so much more to American history. And so they do crave a deeper connection. So I think, on the high school level, particularly 11th and 12th graders, I think this story is ripe for.
And wouldn't that be interesting if at one point in time your book was chosen, like in a history class, to be able to teach, as part of an adjunct to like teaching the lesson and whatnot.
Yes. Erin, from your lips to God's ear, I would love that. I would love that. And the cherry on top would be if it was like in one of my kids' schools. That would just make it all beautiful.
Is everyone listening? Well, because I saw a Simon & Schuster video that you did where you talked about kind of like how you were like a bookworm growing up and you were always in the library and always had your nose in a book, but how you never saw books that had that were by Black authors or had Black authors on the covers. And so your dad had taken you to Hakeem's bookstore in Philadelphia and you got to like pick any book and you picked like The Bluest Eye and the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so I had contacted Hakeem's bookstore to see, could you send us a picture or video of like her stuff on the shelf or a message to her? Because I thought, how, like what we just talked about, I was like, how cool would that be if she was now the one on the bookshelf for the people like coming in to like, them coming in to, and her book is the one on the shelf that they're reaching for or that they're pulling home to like, because you said those were so significant in your life. So I didn't hear back yet, but I was just like you said, it's the same thing with the school. I'm like the fact that it's full circle that now you're one of the books that, they could grab off the shelf and see that. So I just think that's
wow, that was such a sweet thought. That had not occurred to me. Okay, you got your second point of the day because that never occurred to me. Yeah,
well, I was just curious. I was like, oh my God, if I could get a picture of the Yellow Wife at Hakeem's or like a video, like I'm just like, how full circle the first to be put in this moment. I'm like, this is so amazing.
Wow, it would have been, and it will be. It will happen now that we put it out into the universe.
Yeah. Well, and I was curious too. We kind of talked a little about your writing process and style with set like the world building and the setting. You also talked about writing character bios. So I was curious do you have your character bios complete before you start drafting, or is it something where you're constantly adding and modifying as you're writing? And then also after you answer that, if you could give us maybe an example of what, say, maybe Phoebe's mother's character bio looked like Ruth's or Essex's, or because we always hear about Phoebe, but I was curious for one of those other characters that are so important.
Yeah. So I do character bios on the big characters. So I would have one on Phoebe. I would have one on Essex. I may do like a small sketch on her mom. I may do a small sketch on Delphina, but the big overall, the big push on the bios are normally the main characters that drive the story. And then the sub characters, I usually am researching enough to get to know them, and I kind of get to know them as I'm going. But they do change. So for instance, when I was doing Phoebe's characteristics and her bio early on, once I start writing the story, so basically the bio is just a roadmap for me. It's just so that I can start visualizing the character. seeing them move through the story. I need to know their background. So I need to know, like, when was she born and how was she born? And, I need to know, like, what her mom's religion was and all those different things. So that when I step into the story, does she have siblings? What does she like to eat? What kind of things make her angry? When I step into the story armed with that information, now she's going to deepen as the story goes. So I can't step into the story without knowing anything about her. And she changes. So some of the things that I may have put in the character bio, as I'm going through the story, I'm like, that doesn't fit her.
That didn't
Or
fit.
that didn't really fit. And so it'll go away. And then, for instance, I'm working on a new story now, and I could not figure out this particular character. And I'm like, there has to be more to her than this, right? So I'm dealing with the primary plot point of, what she's going through. Let's just say the primary plot point is she wants to get married, right? Okay, she wants to get married, but like, what else? Like, there has to be something else to her. And as I'm researching, I'm doing all these things, I stumble on this other woman who I found, who was connected to where the story takes place. And I stumble upon this whole librarian thing that is huge and beautiful and so lyrical. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were a librarian. And then now she's a librarian. When I started the story, she was not. Right? I just knew a certain amount about her. I knew where she came from. I knew she wanted to get married. I knew where she went to school, but I didn't know what was driving her personal passion. And then through my research, I stumble on something else. And then the character says, that's me. And I go, okay. And then I give it to them. And then now they're a whole deeper level than they were. Exactly. So that's how the character bio thing works.
And it's like written in like do you do it on the computer? Do you handwrite in notebook?
I do both. So I do a Word document. I still work in Word. I know some people do Google Docs, which I probably should, because I lose material all the time. But one of my first agents told me, she said, when you write a scene and you lose it, it's just because you need to rewrite it and make it better. So I never get like completely bent out of shape when I lose
you're
stuff.
full of serendipity over there, so go with it.
That's it. But I put it on a Word document. But as I'm going and I'm researching, I mean, if you could see my desk is like to the left. If you could see my desk, I have little slips of paper with handwritten notes. I have a journal that I keep on my desk. So I'm constantly handwriting stuff and typing at the same time. I go back and forth.
You carry like notebook and pen with you, and if you get an idea, you jot it down, and then when you get home, you like go to your computer and like
that never works. I never know where the notebook or the pen is. So no, I don't. I wish I could, but like I have to just keep reminding myself. The other day I was going for a run and I had a really good idea, so I just stopped and voice recorded it. But I never even listened to the voice recording. But just the idea of doing it, I remembered. So when I got back to my computer, I remembered because I was intentional about remembering. Do you know what I mean?
Taking notes, even if you don't refer back to it, the process of writing solidifies it.
Exactly.
Is running something that will trigger a lot of ideas, or where do you get kind of your best ideas?
So running for me actually helps to clear my mind. So I normally run after I write. I write in the morning. So I write in the mornings, and then I'll go for a run or something. And by putting on music or listening to a book, I just got into audiobooks, which I think I'm really late to the game. Literally this year, so now I just finished my third book this year. I just finished my third audiobook.
Who runs all the time, because then you can read so much more volume of books.
Yes, and that was the reason why I got into it.
So many, because you're probably having to do ARC blurbs and who knows what else.
Yeah. But when I run and I change the channel, meaning music or a book or something, then it's like I clear my mind from the story, but it makes space for something new to pop in. So it's a good tool for me.
It shuts down that part, and then, okay, now where are we going? Kind of
yeah, exactly.
Well, and I came across some various catchphrases and quotes that you've used in some of your past writing workshops. One that I just was like, this is so impactful and strong and powerful, was pins up, fears down, write without fear, and edit without mercy. So I was curious if those words, is that quote from you, does that represent your signature writing style, or are those the type of words that when you're in the trenches of having to write these like horrible and heinous injustices and events, is that something that kind of keeps you motivated and helps you be able to handle it and helps you keep going and writing when you're having to write just these, awful things? Is that something that keeps you going?
That's a good question. The pins up is more like you can write anywhere, anytime, on command. It doesn't have to be in my office with my special notepad, with the sun on my face. Pins up means you can write anywhere, anytime. Fears down is more like don't be afraid of the process. Yes, it's gonna hurt. You know, um, I was just recently thinking about taking a memoir class because I really like to write fiction because I don't necessarily have to be honest about writing about myself when I do. But I thought, well, gosh, what would happen if I was honest about myself as I was writing? Like that would hurt really, really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, pins up, fears down, go
Right.
for it. So that's what that's about. Pins up, fears down, like just go for it.
And like the edit without mercy, how hard is it when like you said, you poured blood, sweat, and tears into writing like a scene or a couple chapters, and then they're like, oh, that can't make the cut, or that's got to go, or let's shorten this down, you need to cut like 5,000 words, and you're like, like, is that
Yeah.
like, you gotta remember, edit without mercy, we've got to cut it, we've got to.
Yeah, I'm usually it hurts when it hurts when my agent is like, this isn't working, or this cut this, or you didn't do, or like whatever comment she gives me that did not go with my plan. It
Right.
always hurts. So I need like a day or two to get over myself.
Right.
So and I know this. So I know once we have that editorial conversation and she says what she says, she's saying it because she knows how to make me a better writer and to push
Right.
me, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. And so I
Right.
have to nurse my wounds for a day or two, get over myself, get back in the saddle, and then get to the editing without mercy.
And then some after the fact, you're like, oh wait, that does flow better.
Always. Always.
So
And so that's why I know I have to just lick my wounds and do what she
right.
tells me to do. Because it's like as a writer, there's only so much that we can see from our perspective.
Right.
So
Too
when
close
you bring
to it.
your too close to it. So when my agent comes in, my editor comes in, they're looking at it with fresh eyes, different perspective. They're thinking about things that I'm not thinking. So I have to trust them as the professional, as this is their job, and that they're only trying to make me better, and 9 out of 10 times I take the suggestions. 9 out of 10 times it makes the story better. Actually, 10 out of 10, it always makes the story better.
Is your editor listening to this? You're like, and the other thing that I found that was so joyful and I rejoiced in was when you let us in, and we learned about the triumph that came in the end out of pain and loss, that the devil's half acre became God's half acre
Mm.
when Mary Lumpkin, an emancipated Mary Lumpkin, leased the land to Reverend Dr. Nathaniel Culver for his Baptist seminary. So this site that was usually a site of pain now was a site for education and ministry of freed men.
Mhm.
And that school, it didn't even end there. That school then, I mean, this is the kind of stuff when you research history that you're like, it's almost like it can't be true, or like a movie, and it was all really true. Like this
Mhm.
school then became a precursor to an HBCU, Virginia Union University, which was a school of notable alumni and trailblazers, and a school of many firsts. The first African American U.S. governor, Virginia mayor, Navy admiral, and it's like, what like how could that even, like, it just amazed me. And so I was curious, if did you find that out when you were on the Richmond Slave Trail? Is that something you learned about when you were researching? Like, is there anything else you can tell us regarding that, or?
Yeah, that came later, actually. And those were some of the details that cinched it for me that I was supposed to write this story. Once I got to the fact that it went from the devil's half acre to God's half acre, and that Mary Lumpkins had leased it, and it was this place for free people to come and learn. It was like the nail in the coffin for me. It was the cherry on top. It was this is destined to happen. I have to write this story.
And so how did you find out about it, if you said it happened later?
Yeah, so it was part of just the researching, just online. Like before I even went out of the house, I was Googling. So I literally just Googled every newspaper article I could find, everything on Mary Lumpkin, everything on the Lumpkins jail, and just coming across, several articles and periodicals. That's when I discovered that about the school. And then I went into the actual libraries and started to pull books and that sort of thing. But I found that out basically just by going online.
And I wonder how many students or alumni of the school don't know the history all the way back to that point.
Like, it's on their website. It's on the Virginia Union University website. So it's just a matter of do students actually read.
Right, because I saw it on the website. I was like, I wonder how many actually know the origins or whatnot.
Right, yes.
I also found it really fitting that I got to talk to you this month during Women's History Month, because I felt like this was such a great read for women and for book clubs this month. For one, I mean, this is a story of strong women, strong mothers who are willing to sacrifice, for the survival of their family and for better lives of their children. But my favorite part, the second part, was how you immortalized an enslaved woman on one of the Virginia plantations that you visited, by naming your main character Phoebe after her. And I thought that was so full circle, because in the book, Phoebe keeps a journal and she immortalizes and writes the history of the fancy girls before they are bought and sold. And so, you did that, and also in turn Phoebe did that. And I just think that books, they're able to create these lifetimes without end. They're able to kind of immortalize a place in history, like you said, for people that may not normally be remembered, like when your daughter was saying, like, we don't hear about some of these lesser known figures. And so I just thought that was so powerful. And so I didn't know if there were any reads that you have read lately, or that maybe are some of your favorites that you would maybe recommend for women, or for, of course, other than The Yellow Wife, that you would maybe recommend, or for Women's History Month, that also kind of speak to that anthem and cause, because I just felt like your book had so many parallels that made it such a perfect book for this month.
Wow.
So I was curious as to what.
Thank you. I'm going to give you a third gold star, because I did not even make the connection of Phoebe's name with the work that she did. Sometimes as a writer, things just happen. They just fall into place, and it's not something that I think about, but you explained it so beautifully. So thank you.
Oh,
three gold stars for you today. So yeah, there's a few books. There's a book coming out. If you love The Yellow Wife and you want to learn even more about women like Mary Lumpkin, there's a book that I just read. It's coming out in July. It's called Island Queen, and it's by Vanessa Riley. And it's a story about an enslaved woman in the Caribbean who defied everything that people told her she was going to be. And she becomes one of the first women and former slave and Black millionaire of her time. And she was just a fierce, fierce woman. Of course, the story is fictionalized, but it offered another perspective, because I never really, being American born and not really having not having any roots in the Caribbean, I never really thought about slavery on that side of the ocean. And she does a beautiful job of bringing this character to life. So that's called Island Queen. I also think if you just go into the classics, like Margaret Walker wrote a beautiful book, Jubilee. It was one of the first books that I had read about enslaved people. And as a matter of fact, one of my mentors, when I was struggling with Yellow Wife, she told me, she said, Sadeqa, think of Jubilee. Margaret Walker wrote a book about enslaved people, but that wasn't the heart of the story. The backdrop of the story was slavery, but at the heart of it, it was love and family and sacrifice. And when she said that to me, I was able to change my brain on the way I needed to write Yellow Wife. So I would also recommend Jubilee by Margaret Walker. There's so many good books right now. It's so hard to say, just to name one of them. I'm just thinking, what am I reading right now? Right now, I'm reading The Paris Library.
Oh.
I'm at the part where like I know once I pick it up this next time I'm gonna finish it. So I've been nursing it. And that's when you know it's a good book. Like when you get to the part where you just don't want to finish it. So that's where I am. And I'm actually about to listen to The Rose Code by Kate
Yeah.
Quinn.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna be my next audiobook. But I also, if anyone loves the book Vanishing Half, absolutely love that by Britt Bennett.
I literally, when I was reading your book, completely thought about that book because it was this like I don't want to give too much away at the end of your book, but the way, how do we say it without spoiling?
They go hand in hand. If
Yeah,
you read The Vanishing Half and you read Yellow Wife, they just go really well together. They're like
yeah,
peanut butter and jelly.
yeah. And I thought, wow, it's just fortuitous that both of them came out around this time and speaking to the same things of living two different
Yes.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. They go
that's
hand
funny
in
that you
hand.
brought that up because I was like, I totally was thinking about The Vanishing Half when I read your book.
They go well together. Yeah. Those are two books to read back to back. I think that you will be pretty happy if you do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And when you're talking about the Island Queen, that made me think too about in your book about how Ruth always told Phoebe that she was descended from the Queen.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Queen Viney Brown.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
Viney Brown actually was a member of my family. My grandmother told me about her. I think it was her cousin or her aunt. I have to look at my family tree. Right before my grandmother passed away, I was sitting at her kitchen table and something just asked me to ask her about the family tree. And we literally wrote it down on like the back of a card or something. I brought it home and then she died a few months later. And so Viney
Well,
Brown was one of the cousins on the family tree. And I remember her telling me how fierce she was and how she didn't take no mess from anybody.
right.
And I just thought, oh, I gotta get
I
her my
gotta find a way
stories.
to put her in.
I got to. Yeah.
Well, and when you're talking about the Island Queen, about her being one of the first millionaires or whatnot, that makes me think of I'm in Indianapolis, and so Madam Walker, in Madam Walker's theater, she was the first millionaire, self-made millionaire,
Wow.
and so her granddaughter, who graduated from my high school, has made a book about her, and then obviously there was the Netflix series, and so yeah,
Yes, which is fabulous.
yeah, all these parallels that from like with this Island Queen book. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to definitely read this.
Yeah, I believe that one comes out in July. So just put it on your TBR list for now.
Yeah. And then have you done, I know you do different events with different authors. Have you done an event with Britt Bennett? It's like, because your books are,
Not not yet actually. I gotta get on my publicist team and we gotta make that happen. I think
yeah,
that would
like
be great.
yeah, the parallels and
But you know what? This is another parallel between Britt Bennett and I. She and I, so when her first book, The Mothers, came out, I was with St. Martin's Press. And I believe it was, I don't know if it was Second House from the Corner or And Then There Was Me. But we did a book swap where I had to read her book and write about it. And she had to read my book and write
like for
about it.
article.
Yeah, like for an article. And I literally just remembered this because I totally forgot. So
And
we did a book swap.
you hadn't met her.
No, I hadn't
Oh,
met her. No. So she and I had done a book swap and I wrote about her book, she wrote about my book. I can't even remember like which magazine, like I don't remember, but when Vanishing Half came out, I thought, oh my gosh, like she and I
yeah.
have crossed paths.
Yeah.
So we'll have to cross
invested.
paths again. Let me
Yeah.
put that energy out there. Let's put that
Right.
energy out there that's gonna happen.
Well, and another thing I was going to say to some readers who might not be familiar with your previous works, it might just seem that you just burst onto the scene to like international bestseller success, like not knowing your history of how hard you worked, how you were in the publishing field and worked for Scholastic and for Putnam as a publicist, and how you had such grind and grit and your masterful hustle, I will say, with self-publishing your first book and all the sacrifices you made. That Yellow Wife is actually your fourth book. And
Yeah.
so I was curious, if I know you kind of rubbed shoulders with a lot of writers when you were doing publicity and whatnot. And so I was curious, kind of what were the best pearls of wisdom that you kind of gathered for them, or who was the writer who maybe gave you like kind of the best nuggets that you use in your writing today, or that you still use? What were you able to gleam, or from who that you used with your writing?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yeah, so I've been at this game for a long time, and it's so funny because I can't tell you how many times I see people talk about my book on Facebook or Instagram, and they're like, and her debut novel, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
You're like, if you only knew what I
If you only knew. If you only knew. But I had the pleasure of working with a lot of really wonderful authors. They didn't always know that I was also an aspiring writer. I wanted to kind of keep that quiet because I needed to, pretend like I was
right.
trying to do my job to the
Yeah.
best of my ability, with no distractions of writing a novel.
Well,
But
and
I
you might
will say,
be more like unedited type of just talking, and you know what I mean? If they didn't think
yeah.
they were trying to listen for maybe a writer from writer to writer, they would be more just free of saying something, you know?
I was really inspired by J.K. Rowling. I worked on the first three Harry Potter books. I was inspired. I would say what I've taken away from her is to be humble always. She was always very, very humble. Whenever she came to New York, she was always very humble. I mean, that's just the best way I can describe her is that it never went to her head. She was always kind to everyone. She was always courteous and considerate. And so I always try and make sure that that's the type of author that I am. She always reached back for me. So even on the two books that I didn't work on, she would always send an autographed copy and say, hey,
Oh,
missed you this
wow.
time. Sorry, I didn't get to see you. Hope you're doing well. Like she didn't forget about the little people,
Right.
So I always try and be courteous and kind. So that was one of the things that I took away from her. I also worked on with an author. Her name was Bibi Moore Campbell, and she's passed away now, but she's written a few books. And she just was a hustler. Like she always, like whatever we asked her to do, she was doing it, but she was also bringing ideas to the table as well. And so I always think of my relationship with Simon and Schuster as a partnership. And so I'm not just sitting around waiting for them to tell me
Right.
what to do. I'm working on ideas at the same time. I'm bringing ideas to the tables. I'm trying to hustle, so that we're all working for the good
You're
of
like,
Yellow.
I'm on this team too. Like, you're
We're
not
on
my,
the team.
we're on the team,
We're
and
on
I'm
the team
right
together.
here too.
Yes. So I got that from her. And then there's another author, Marita Golden, who I actually I took writing classes with as well. And she basically told me to have faith, like to have faith and to not listen to the critics because, critics are critics. That's what they do. But don't let that change my game plan. Don't let that rain on my parade. Like stay my course and always remember I wrote a book. I birthed
Yeah.
an idea. Like
Right.
that is such a wonderful, beautiful thing, and never forget the magic that takes and the strength that it takes and the courage that it takes to actually birth a book. And so
Right.
don't
They
let
can't
anyone
take that
rain
away
on
from
my parade. They can't take that away. Don't
you.
let anybody rain on my parade.
So how do you feel about reviews? Do you read them? Do you just only look at them if somebody is like, hey, did you see that? Da, 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 da. Or like, how do you handle after the book comes out? Like, how do you handle all of that?
I'm so nosy, so I read them.
Like good, bad, and different, like all of them.
I do. And what I do now is I scan them. So I don't read it word for word for word. I just kind of scan it. I scan reviews. I go to YouTube and I watch the book bloggers that talk
Yeah.
about the book and I want to know what they have to say. The good thing about Yellow Wife, to be quite honest, is that most of the reviews, I mean, more than most, a good percentage have all been very kind and just beautiful, so it's just been a really beautiful journey. There's a few, but I try not to let those few taint the ones that really are outstanding. So, but I am
And
nosy. I need to know what people are thinking.
yeah, you're like, I need to know what you're saying. But is there any time where like you'll read a review and it'll be very constructive and there'll be something in there that you're like, I didn't think of it that way. And remembered it when you were writing a future book, or is there anything that you're like, I kind of felt that and it did come off that way? Or like, is there any, or is it just literally all stuff that you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's how I
It's all
feel.
what are you talking about?
Oh, what are you talking about? Because after I turn it in, I'm like, that's the best I got. That
Yeah.
was that's the masterpiece. That's all I have. I don't have anything else to give you. Catch me on the next book. So that was the best I could
So
do.
hard because you're putting out like when this is you, like this is you know what I mean? It's hard. It would be so hard not to take it personal, like because you're like, this is you're putting out into the world. You're like, I'm making myself vulnerable for you. Like, be constructive. Well, and how hard is it to be promoting a book when you're in the middle of writing another one, it's like here you seemingly have finished with this one world and now you're, mired in, digged into this new world, and yet now you're doing this tour where you're having to talk and promote and talk about all these other characters and past life while you're seemingly could be in a completely different, century or, place kind of thing.
Well, let me first say that is a champagne problem, right? So
Yeah,
let me
right.
just say, let me
SWPs,
say that
first
I
world problems.
yes, I recognize that this is a champagne problem. Okay, I am not a doctor. I'm not saving anybody's lives by writing books. But at the same time, it is difficult. I mean, it really is difficult. So I have to split my day where I really have to be intentional about my writing time or it will not happen because there's so many emails that need to be answered. There's so many, online reviews or interviews or things like that that I have to do. So I have to be really conscious of, like the other day I was talking to a friend. She said, "How's it going?" I'm like, "Well, I'm promoting the old book and I'm writing the new book." And then I had to catch myself and I thought, wait, Yellow Wife is not an old book. It's only 3 months old. Is it even 3 months? It's 2 months old.
And
I
I
cannot
feel proud of you because you've been doing it for so.
exactly. So I'm like, okay, I got to get my language right. This is not an old book. This is my
Right.
baby. So I am
Newly released.
raising,
Newly
yes,
released.
I am raising my newly released baby while also carrying my new child. And so
Right.
I have to be gentle to the baby and I have to be gentle to the child that I'm carrying. And
Right.
so I have to find a way to love them both.
Right. And because too, when you finish with the book, like you said, there's this gap between when we actually see it. So like you said, it probably feels like it was that long ago, but to us, it just happened.
Yes, exactly. Because there's about, I mean, I turned Yellow Wife in October. It was sold to Simon and Schuster October of 2019. It came out January 2021. So I did a few edits with, obviously I did a few edits with my editor, but there was space where I had time to start working on a new book or start floating around ideas and that sort of thing. And so by the time Yellow Wife came into the world 2 months ago, I was starting the second draft of this new baby that I'm feeding.
So are you
So
conveniently placed over here that if the camera accidentally went that way on your wall would be like all these
yes,
pictures with this second?
yes, yes.
I'm like,
My new world build is up. Yes.
yeah, when you said about the wall, I'm like, oh, so like right over there is like this other baby.
It is. It is.
So we talked about Hakim's bookstore, which looking into the history of that bookstore and him was amazing, by the way. So thank you for making me aware. Since I'm in India, I wasn't aware of that bookstore. But I know you're doing some more events coming up with bookstores like Harriet's Bookshop, which I am in love with that bookshop. So can you tell the viewers out there if they wanted to see you in some upcoming events, or if they wanted to get like signed copies or something like that, what are some other bookshops or events that are coming up, or where they could, we really want to support indie bookstores. So what ones would you
Yes.
recommend, or what's your favorite local indie bookstore? Or
So Harriet Bookshop is beautiful. I grew up in Philadelphia, so the fact that it's a Philadelphia bookstore is just amazing. I actually just did an IG live with Janine Cook, who's the owner of Harriet's, which was so much fun. And she's such a beautiful, beautiful person. And I also had the honor of teaching her at Drexel University. She's getting her MFA.
oh
So
wow,
I did get to work with her a little bit on the other side as an instructor. So
wow.
that was so much fun. So Harriet's Bookshop, of course. Here in Richmond, there are three wonderful shops. The Little Bookshop, there's Fountain Books, and also Chop Suey. They all have Chop Suey books. They all have autographed copies of Yellow Wife. So I know it's really hard for viewers to get their hands on autographed copies because we're all home and not
Right.
traveling the country. But those three bookstores do have autographed copies. If you're in New Jersey, I used to live in New Jersey, so my bookstore was Words Bookstore in Maplewood, which is one of my favorites as well. So definitely support indie bookstores.
Do you
They're
ever
all up, they're everywhere. They're
do you ever
everywhere.
sign books out in the wild? Like,
Like
do you ever, like, if you're like out and about, like if you're like say in a bookstore or Target or whatever, like do you ever like have a pen and sign books out in the wild?
so I thought about it, but I don't want to look crazy. So Target, this is the first time that Target carried any of my books. Yellow Wife is in Target. So of course I stalk myself. I go to Target just so that I can see my book on the bookshelf. And I thought about pulling out my pen, but my son works at Walmart and he's like, Mommy, they have cameras everywhere. They're gonna see you.
Oh, so they might not realize the author and think you're facing their books.
Exactly. So that's not a good idea.
They would eventually come around and realize it would be all okay, but it might be an uncomfortable in the between.
Yeah, it would be a thing. So I have not done that, but I will tell you this: I had to go back to my roots a couple of weeks ago when we did the Richmond Slave Trail. So my husband, when I was a self-published author, we literally were selling books up and down the East Coast. So we had this whole program. We have a big SUV. We had the boxes and the retractables and everything. So we would set up, and it was a production, right? It was beautiful. It was like, come buy my book.
Right.
So we haven't done that in a really long time. But for the Richmond Slave Trail, I said to him, I'm like, it's going to be like 50, 60 people out there. We probably should think about bringing books. So he's like, all right. So he came, he opened up the trunk of the car. He had the boxes of the books. And so it was like we went back to our roots.
It's deja vu.
It was. And we sold like 30 copies. So it was really good that I had done that.
The hustle ain't coming out of me.
It is not. So yes.
So since you have the connection to Janine and Harriet's Bookshop, and you're, like you said, you're a runner and all that, did you participate in any of like the Harriet Tubman walk across where the group of ladies did the...
No, I didn't, because I'm in Virginia. And so
right.
I haven't gone home. I was just thinking, my parents, my dad now and his wife live in South Jersey, but he was really like putting us like, I can't see you guys until I get my vaccine.
Oh, yeah.
He was still not playing. Like he was not playing at all. So we've been FaceTiming, but I was thinking I may try and go in June or so, because by then he'll have his second shot, and and I should be able to see my family at that point. But my dad he wasn't taking any chances.
That's amazing.
And not because I have 3 Jeremy children, so he's right not to take any chances.
Right. And so is there a virtual event that's coming up too? We talked about kind of where they can pick up your book, but is there a virtual event coming up?
There are virtual events. I mean, like every day of the week. I am working so hard, Erin, to get this book out. If you go to my website, sadeqajohnson.net, I actually need to update it today. Oh, I'll tell you a good one. Next week, I am going to be at the Virginia Book Festival. So that's going to be...
Is that virtual or is that...
It's virtual. So everybody can sign on. It is next Wednesday. Let me just double check. It's next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And you can go to Virginia Festival of the Books to get the link. And definitely please come and check me out. So that's one that I could just think of off the top of my head. Everything else you can find on my website.
It's going to be virtual then, and the ones that are coming up in the spring and summer that you're participating in?
Yeah, everything on my calendar right now is virtual. I just got a possible in-person event in October.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a matter of some of the book festivals, like from October to March is where I've been hearing that they're trying to either do hybrid or try and go back in person. So nothing outside before October. Everything is virtual.
Well, that's great to know that there are these festivals coming up that our viewers and readers can catch you on. And of course, whoever's watching viewer-wise our chat today, if they like, share, or comment on our video chat, they have a chance to win. Thank you for providing a giveaway copy of that beautiful Yellow Wife book right there. Check out that poster right there. So I wanted to thank the viewers for all their support, and then also, of course, thank you for providing us with this wonderful read in a perfect time of Women's History Month, and the story that you brought to us of Mary Lumpkin and the Lumpkins Jail. And I didn't know, was there anything else? I know we need to keep it short on time because you're so busy, but is there anything that you want to get out there, because it's been such a wonderful chat, but if there's anything else you want to leave us with regarding the Yellow Wife?
I just want to say thank you. I mean, it's so important that people like you have these platforms for authors. So I just want to let you know that I appreciate I appreciate you doing what you do, and I encourage your viewers to make sure they put reviews up. I mean, that really, really helps us as authors. Amazon, BookBub, Goodreads. Please put your reviews up. Please tell a friend. I speak to book clubs all the time. So if you have a book club and you want to select Yellow Wife, you can go to my website. I have a whole book club section. Just send me a message and I'll try and get you on the calendar. And my website is sadeqajohnson.net.
Yeah, that's amazing that to appear at book clubs, because I mean that's invaluable when you read the book but then get to talk to the author themselves, because there's lots of times where readers might come across something that you're like, I didn't even, mean it that way, or learn some behind the scenes tidbit that just makes the story come alive even more. So that's wonderful that you do that.
Yeah. Favorite things to do, because as you said, readers and people who are in book clubs, they talk about a book on a different level. And that's always so interesting for me. And I love to connect with people. I would say the biggest thing that the pandemic has done is two things. Is one, it's kept me from like hugging and talking to people and meeting people at bookstores and that sort of thing. But it's also brought me closer because I'm reaching people who I would not have been able to reach before, because now everything is virtual. So there's two sides of it for me.
And probably when we come out of this, there'll probably be a little bit, like you said, a hybrid of both, because you reach, audiences that may not live too close to an indie bookstore, or may not live close to where there's like a festival or an author luncheon or something like that, so that they can connect with you virtually, as well as when we are out back in the wild.
Yes.
Well, I wish you continued best success. I cannot wait for this next book. Do you know what? Is it next year that'll be published, or do we know any date?
No, I don't have anything yet. I haven't even presented it to the publisher yet. So I'm in that prepare for presentation stage right now. So we'll see what they say.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.